Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Think Big Bodybuilding Media. I'm Scott McNally, and I'm joined tonight by Andrew Barry and Nate Spear. We are going to talk about the New York Pro that literally just happened. I was messaging with these guys. We were going back and forth about it, and Nick Walker comes out on top. So we're going to break this down, starting with what are we going to do? Top 5 guys? Does that sound like a plan to you?
Yeah, top 5 sounds good.
All right, we'll keep it shorter, so we can keep everybody's attention. But let's get this thing done. We'll get it out there, and I'm really excited because I wanted to get your guys' thoughts. So Nick Walker in first, he beat out Justin Rodriguez. We're gonna talk a little bit about that in a minute. But then we had Hassan Mustafa, Dorian Haywood for 4th, and then
Muhammad in 5th.
Yeah, I was just looking at how they spelled his name there.
Yeah, they spelled with a K.
Well, it's spelled with a K, Muhammad, but I've heard of Muhammad and Mohammed.
Yeah, so I've always just said Mohammed, but I hadn't seen it written down. Mohammed El
never will
Iman.
know his name.
Yeah.
So I actually looked it up on the internet, and I saw it spelled both ways when I Googled it and both of them came up to him. So maybe there's a traditional spelling, and then there's the English spelling or something like that.
Yeah.
We need to get this guy a nickname, the Big K.
Yeah.
With a K.
So he was our 5th place guy, let's start with him. We should mention too, he just beat out Blessing. So Blessing was what? He was in 3rd place last week, was it, for the Indy?
Yeah.
Blessing was in. Beat out Dorian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
So he took 3rd. Yeah. He's down to 6th, and Muhammad had beat him out. So this is what we're looking at here. I don't know much about him. Do you guys know much about him?
No, I just know he did the Chicago Pro last year, I think, but he didn't place at all.
Okay.
So I think no one really knew who he was, obviously. I mean,
yeah. He's obviously improved a lot since the Chicago last year, but I think from last week, the Indy Pro, to today, I think we saw his body, I guess, looked a little tired. He looked like he had a good film of water over him.
Yeah.
And we all know, some people can either thrive off of doing shows week to week, back to back, or some people kind of go the other way. And I think, unfortunately for him, he went the other way in this situation, especially from the back. I was impressed last week with how dry his hamstrings and glutes were in a lot of the shots. And then that was the first thing I noticed when he turned around today. There was a film there, and it just didn't have the pop that it had last time.
I could see that.
He's definitely a guy. I think he needs to fine tune his posing. He's got that sort of waist distension a little bit. I think it's even take tips from Nick Walker. You know what I mean? I think that's sort of what helped him tonight was he refined a lot of posing. And I think if this guy can go back through polish, he has tons of muscle. His quads are nuts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He has leg development. It's really just sort of, I think if he can fine tune and really polish his posing and come in a little bit sharper, he's definitely going to move up a couple placings there.
Yeah, I could see that. I liked his posing. He had a nice routine. And, you guys have had to deal with me talking about Dorian nonstop here. Dorian's my guy. I want to see Dorian, do well. And I talked to Dave Kalick before this, and he said, I think he made a really good point. He said, if we can maintain our placing, maintain a 4th place, going from Indy into New York, that would be a huge victory for them. And I know that their goal is to next go to the Puerto Rico, which I think I think Dave told me that's going to be in the Bahamas this year. So that could be interesting. I was already on Google Flights looking at how much it would cost. $500 from Detroit round trip right now, but
it's not horrible.
Yeah, the goal is if they can do decent there, he has enough points that he could make the Olympia. So that's what he'd really like to do. I feel like he improved this week from the Indy last week. And I know that the judges had wanted to see him 5 pounds tighter, and that they wanted to see him, just work on some aspects of posing, which I feel like he came in drier for this show. What do you guys think?
I think he definitely came in drier and tighter for this show. I think one of the things that he runs into is as he's posing, the longer he poses, water just comes out of the tissue a little bit. And I don't know if that's an issue that he needs to practice his posing more, in the weeks leading up to the show, or if it has to do with water balance or that kind of thing. But what I noticed is that he comes out and he looks really tight. He's got nice pop to his tissue. He's full as a house, and he's dry. But then I notice as, you know, because when you're in that third through like fifth or sixth spot, quite often you end up doing like two to 4 rounds of posing versus like if you're in first or second, they do 1 or 2 rounds, then they dismiss you. But if you're in that like third, 4, 5, 6, you're kind of part of the first call out, you're part of the second call out. So you end up posing like double what the other guys do. And for him, I just noticed like as he gets into those like third, fourth, fifth turns around imposing, he gets a little bit watery. The water comes out, and I think that's something that they got to find a way to address. And obviously, Dave Kalich's a really smart guy, and I'm sure he's thinking about that. But Dorian being a workhorse, like I have no doubt that he's going to make the Olympia this year if they just keep, you know, shooting for those, you know, fourth, third places and just showing up. You know.
Yeah, I would agree. I think too he gets some nerves. He gets a little bit of nerves. He gets pumped up, and I wonder sometimes. I'm sure you guys have probably experienced this. Nate, have you ever gotten on stage and looked different than you planned to, and you thought it had like specifically to do with like just being excited?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think a lot of it's too when you feel a little out of place. I mean, to be honest, I mean Dorian probably doesn't feel like. I mean, realistically, a lot of people wouldn't think he'd be in that top 3, top 4 at the New York Pro. So I think maybe mentally, you know what I mean, and inside his own head, he probably is, you know what I mean, like he believes in himself. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, it's probably a little intimidating. I mean, for me, I remember when I did USA's, I was pretty nervous. You know what I mean, just because like I was going against like guys that I've been following and stuff like that, looking up to. And it was just sort of one of those things. You know what I mean, you can get in your head a little bit. I think as the more he's in those placings, you know what I mean? His confidence obviously will come. He'll calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
Because now he's starting to have a home in that top 5. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you guys, if you were to improve anything, Nate, what would you say would be your thought to bring in an even better Dorian than this?
Well, honestly, in my opinion, I actually like his package a little bit better last week because he was really, really full.
He was.
And I know that judges wanted him tighter. And I think that's an issue too with him is some guys, you know what I mean? If they have that crazy blasting fullness, it looks really good. And then they're like, oh, I want you 5 pounds lighter, but then you sort of lose that pop. You know what I mean? It's sort of hard to find. Some guys, it's hard to play that balancing. Like you can't just like diet, and then just get harder. You know what I mean? So I think with him, it's sort of finding out, you know, because everyone's knock usually is on Dorian is like, oh, I want a little tighter, a little bit tighter. You know what I mean? A little drier. But it's one of those things. Like his calling card is his fullness, in my opinion. You know what I mean? He's got that round, nice full pop. But yeah, like Andrew was saying too, he tends to fade a little bit too as he poses. You know what I mean? When he comes out, it's like, holy shit, like this guy's like popping. You know what I mean? And then he sort of starts to fade. I noticed tonight his stomach was sort of, you know, he's breathing hard. You know, it's one of those things. You know, I think he poses sort of extreme. You know, he's really into it, which I like. But at the same time, sometimes maybe that costs him a little bit of stamina. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you guys nailed it. Anything else you want to say, Andrew, before we moved on?
I'm actually going to go a little bit against Nate there with because, well, he listened to the judges last week and they said come in tighter, which he did, and he beat a guy that beat him last week.
That's true.
Actually, he beat 2 guys that beat him last week in Muhammad and Blessing. So obviously you got to find the balance, but I think, you know, they said, hey, we want to see you 5 pounds tighter. He came in 5 pounds tighter and he knocked 2 guys off that genetically probably should beat him. You know, so I think obviously keep finding that balance and keep working the posing. As Nate said, the midsection, keep that in at all times. And because he's not a guy with a small waist naturally, and just work your rounds of posing at home. Have Dave, you know, watch him through Skype or whatever, and put him through, brutal rounds of posing, you know, the kind of way like Kenny Wallach does with people, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you don't realize how difficult it is until you're actually up there and you're under the lights and you're dehydrated. And like you had mentioned too, you're doing this for the 3rd or the 4th time after, you know, the other guys have already gotten off stage, and now you're going up against a bunch of fresh guys that are just getting started. So I can see that. Let me see where we got here. I'm looking for Hassan. All right, so here's Hassan today. And I just can't get over how freaking big his quads are. Like, I just can't get over that. It's ridiculous.
I mean, realistically, this guy should be like probably winning shows. I mean, he's probably got the same amount of muscle as Nick, but I mean, honestly, I think he's more pleasing. So this guy could come in, you know what I mean? Obviously, it's one of those things I'm sure he's heard a lot. So it's one of those things that might be frustrating because it sounds pretty hard. But if he can come in at his best, I mean, he should be winning shows pretty easily, I think, you know?
Yeah, he's got some incredible size.
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind. This guy should be him at 100% would win the show. Don't you guys agree?
Yeah, definitely.
Have we ever seen him? Have we ever seen him at 100?
I don't think so. He was really good, as we were talking about before, the 2018 Tampa Pro. He was much better condition than he is today. He had cross striations all over his quads and his hamstrings. We just didn't really see that today. And I don't know anything about his prep, but I do know that me and Nate were talking that, you know, watching him leading up to this, we're like, I don't think he's going to be 100%. Like you can just kind of tell with some people when they're 2 weeks out or 3 weeks out. And then some of the posing he was doing, with some of the, you know, obviously with some really good people, like I think Flex Wheeler was helping him. He had him doing a shot that really exposed his midsection for an ab and thigh, which I thought like didn't make any sense to me. It's on Instagram, but yeah, I mean, I don't really know. Obviously, there's a language barrier, so you don't get to see a lot of him. I know he has a YouTube channel, but they don't have English subtitles up on a lot of his videos, so you can't understand what they're talking about. Yeah, I think we're just waiting to see him come in at 100%.
I will say, I don't know if you guys know, but he actually has prepped this during Ramadan. So I guess he was training at night, and he had to, so you couldn't eat for sunlight. I don't really know how that stuff works, but
yeah.
So I don't know
forgot
why
about
they picked the
that.
show. You think they would plan it a little bit, but I know Chris is also. I think Chris is Muslim, Aceto.
He is.
Yeah,
So
he is.
they must have some kind of. They know maybe a way around it, but I feel like that's not going to be your. Like, as you took on a client, wouldn't you be like, oh, let's do this not around Ramadan?
Yeah, let's either do it right before or, you know, 6 to 8 weeks after Ramadan. Like maybe the Tampa Pro or even the Chicago Pro or something.
I guess he trains at Dragon's Lane. I guess he was training at like midnight and like pretty much when no one was there because he would train with a couple meals in him, which was at like, you know, 9 o'clock at night, 10 at night.
Yeah. I've talked to guys who have eaten all their food. Like they haven't missed anything in Ramadan. They've just done it all at nighttime. But that would take a lot. And even if you were to do that, I can't imagine that you would be your best because I mean, that literally just ended. So he had enough time to hit peak week. So I think that's a huge point.
Well, also it's not a guy that generally gets in shape easily either. So, you know what I mean? He's already sort of working against the grain as far as his genetics go, as far as getting in condition. From what I've heard, at least, that's sort of what the word is on the street, that he's a really hard guy getting in shape. So, and then you have
he's had digestive issues in the past. I think hemorrhoids, and he had some colon issues last year. So maybe that plays a factor too. And we just, you know, every time he preps, because I think we all have clients and stuff that, you know, when their body is under a lot of stress, maybe such as Ramadan, when you're completely flopping your circadian, cortisol's flipped and everything. You could be playing that could be playing a major factor in the way your digestion's working. And maybe that's what we're seeing, you know?
Yeah, I could see that. And I wonder what their plan is from here, because I do feel like where he's at, I mean, it wouldn't take a lot more, you know, it wouldn't take a ton more. I mean, if he were to keep dieting for something like the Chicago, like you mentioned, or Tampa, I mean, he could be ridiculous by that time.
The only problem with that is that, you know, we run into the issue of chems and stuff, because I know Tampa's 12 weeks away.
Yeah.
Is Puerto Rico
California,
before that? I can't remember.
California's pretty close.
Okay.
Was that 6 weeks away?
I think it's like 3 or 4.
Okay. Oh, then that's a perfect situation right there.
I think that's pretty close, because I know Blessing he would have that show on his radar too, or whatever.
Okay. Huh. Yeah, that would be a good move. You know, 6 weeks would be something like that would be perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get to the big picture here, the big story of the day. Here's our second place finisher, previous first place finisher last week. And I got to tell you, man, I felt for him when they announced him, because I feel like you could tell he was not happy. I mean, obviously who's ever happy getting second place? But there was that moment when he walked up to the trophy, and you could tell he was very bummed. But then he pulled it together, you know, and shook everybody's hands. And I thought that this was a really good look. I mean, one of the questions I wanted to ask you guys, how does this Justin Rodriguez compare to last week's?
He was definitely better this week. I thought he was probably 5 to 10% tighter, and I know that was his feedback after the show. Steve even said it in the post-show interview with him, or with whoever was doing it with him. Yeah, I thought he was better. He did have some trouble in prejudging, opening up his lats, especially in the rear shots, and I think that cost him. I would say Justin probably won the night show, and Nick dominated the prejudging today. And I think you just look at it, overall, and I think Nick edged him out slightly. We'll have to look at the scorecards, but yeah, I think if he was posing correctly in the morning, it might have been a slightly different outcome, or a completely different outcome tonight, because I do feel that Justin turned it on tonight, especially when he turned around in the back.
Yeah. What was the deal?
That rear flat spread.
Yeah, what was the deal with that?
At finals, it was just like crazy, you know what I mean? And at prejudging, it was like nothing, you know what I mean? So
I think
you even noticed when he came out during his routine, he walked over to the corner and he hit the last spread, and he turned around and kind of nodded to the crowd like, see, I can hit the last spread.
Yeah.
I felt like he was kind of like saying, I know I messed up this morning, but here it is, and look at it in all its glory. I think, like I was telling you guys earlier, I think it could have been something to do with like a Terry's. Yeah. Or maybe it was just nerves, but I think sometimes, like when guys have issues like with the Terry's, like if you've torn one or you have some inactivation with the nerves, sometimes you just don't feel it, and you think you're rotating and you're bringing your elbows forward. You think you're spreading your scapula, but it's just staying right there. I'm not a doctor. I don't know exactly what was going on there. It could have, again, just been nerves, and he was just so amped up to be going against Nick Walker.
Yeah.
But I think we can all agree that when they hit that shot side by side, Justin wins that last spread.
Yeah, I don't have one from finals. I just had this one in the morning, and I think everybody was kind of like, what's going on with that?
Yeah, I did notice too, his stomach seems a little bit, sometimes it's an issue, sometimes it's not. It looked a little bit smooth to me, but I mean, from the back, he looked a lot drier, I'd say, this week.
Here's a shot from the front. Comparing
Justin's one of those guys. Justin's one of the only guys that can pull off that kind of classical front double bicep in the open. I can't think of too many other people that do that. And I think it works really well and flows for his body. And maybe it hides his midsection a little bit more, like Nate's talking about, when it is a little smoothed over or when it is protruding just a little bit. I think in comparison, though, you look at Nick's legs instantly and you see there's just crazy separation on those things.
I think a lot of people, too, are like, oh, why did Justin do this show? But I don't know if a lot of people know, but Justin's actually a New York guy. And that shot, I think, originated from Victor Martinez. I think he, because he come up under the New York guys, you know what I mean? A lot of them are really close to them, like John and Akeem and Juan. They're all like brought him up, you know what I mean? So I think this show really meant a lot to him. So that's probably why he too was like, you know what I mean, a little down for not winning it.
Yeah. I'd like to get into comparing the two of them, and I have a bunch more pictures. But before we do, let me see if I can find my shot that I have here of Nick. I thought, man, this was, is this Nick here? I can't tell by the little thumbnail. There we go. I thought this was an incredible look, man. And to think that this guy was an amateur last year, I think it speaks so much of potential. I mean, if he can, he did okay last year in a men's open Ifbb show. And this year he came back and, successfully won, what's arguably one of the biggest shows, I think outside of this, or at least traditionally, it's been like New York Pro and then the Arnold and then the Olympia. Yeah. I think shows like Tampa and Chicago are coming up on that, but I think this was a look worth winning. And we all kind of talked about it before we recorded this, but I think that, this was, to me at least, this was something that I kind of felt like it was really a 1-2 show, that it was really going to be, Justin and Nick. And to me, I felt like I saw Nick all day personally. I know it's easy to say, now that it's over, but like, I totally called that.
I think they're like really doing their homework though and doing things right because, I think they're listening to outside feedback and they're not having a big ego because like they changed their posing. You see how his abs are crunched now. His front lat spread has changed. It used to be his worst pose. I think that pose is nasty now because he brings his elbows forward and really flares his lats out now, whereas before he couldn't do that. And they're not just like, get bigger, get bigger, get bigger. I know he grows like no matter what, but like, you know what I mean? Most guys have not really listened to outside voices where they're sort of taking constructive criticism, and I think using that in their favor. That's why I think he got a lot better. You know, he's improving. Like, I don't know if people remember, but his front lat spread wasn't that good.
Well, remember years past in the like when he was an amateur, we'd see him in the off season get up to like 310, 308. I think at one of the Atlantics, but when you did Atlantic States in 20, was it 18? He was like walking around at like 308, I think it was, and like he looked like a friggin' tank. And I think what we notice now, because everyone is so open with the social media on Instagram and everything, he's maintained like a really lean physique, which tells me he's probably not getting above like 275, 280 if he's competing in the 260s right now, because he still looked like he had abs year round, and like striations at his triceps and all that kind of thing. So I think maybe they figured out the formula. Hats off to him and Jansen on figuring out the formula, listening to the right criticism. And not just trying to go for size at all costs, All
right, I'm going to grab these pictures here. I had that front lat spread. We could start with that. I want to hear what you guys think on these, shot per shot. I probably should have started with like front double, because I mean they both look incredible. One of the things that we were talking about on text earlier, one of you guys had said, "Hey, are his legs down?" And then you stopped him, who was it that said that? And then you said, or maybe it's everything else has just come up.
Or is his upper body just up so much?
Yeah.
I mean, because we all know his legs are huge.
Yeah.
So I have to assume, and as Nate pointed out, his lat spread has become one of his strongest poses as it was his weakest pose before. So you have to assume that he brought his upper body up that much, right? I mean,
well, I think too,
the other thing
I was just going to say, Nick has always had big legs, but his quads never had a lot of sweep. You know what I mean? So I think that's one thing, too. He always says that's a battle for him. I mean, not many things he has to battle for. But
I also want to point out Nick's tan was really good today. That goes a long way, I think, especially when you're on a pro stage with good lighting. Because I noticed some of these guys didn't have great tans, and it really just brought out all of Nick's detail. Obviously, you got to be peeled and in condition, but I felt like that suited him really well.
Yeah, I think you had mentioned Dorian's tan at prejudging. It looked like it could be a little bit darker. I think they improved that. I think that did look better by the evening.
Yeah.
How about these side shots? Now, this isn't a great shot of Justin because we're kind of turned away a little bit. I feel like Nick does a fantastic job at these side shots. At the same time, as big as Nick looks on his own, I thought it was interesting that like when Dorian stood next to him, it's not like Dorian dwarfed him. You know what I mean? And I even felt that way at last year. Was that at Nationals? Was that at Nationals where you guys were together, Nate, or was that North Americans?
North Americans.
North Americans. Because standing alone, it's like, man, he looks so huge. And then when I saw you guys all together, I was like, okay, now I see scale here that, size wise, you guys weren't, like super far apart.
Nate's a big guy too,
Yeah. But not taking away from you by any means, man. But I felt the same way, like looking at him and Dorian, I was like, oh, wow. So him and Dorian are about the same size in a lot of areas.
Yeah, Nick, I think, is structurally just like compact, you know what I mean? So when he starts opening up in shots, I mean, he looked great here. I don't think you know what I mean? But he obviously has much more size than these guys, but it almost looks like not quite because structurally he's a little bit more narrow, I would say, than like, say, Justin.
Okay.
I think Justin's a little bit wider, in my opinion, up top at least, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What would you say?
Yeah, he is. I agree 100%. And definitely, you can just see it when he hits his front lats or his front relaxed of Justin versus Nick, or Justin versus the rest of the field. I think Justin has a really good shoulder girdle that allows him to just spray that frame nicely.
Here's a rear shot.
Yeah, I mean, structurally, Nick has one of the best back double biceps. He just keeps filling it in. You know what I mean? His back has always, I feel like, been – people think it's his strong point, but I think his structure to the back double bicep is a strong point with his arms, his shoulders, obviously crazy hamstrings, his glutes, but I think he can still work on filling in his back. That would be like one of my only knocks on him, though. You know what I mean? Everything else is great, but structurally, you can't get much better than that in a back double bicep. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's got the opportunity to have one of the best backs ever, as you said, if he keeps filling in that detail and just chinking away at it. But the biggest thing that pops out at me from when these guys turn around from the back, because I thought they were very evenly matched in this rear double bicep for the most part. But you look at Nick's lower body and just how wide his hamstrings and his adductors are.
Yeah.
And you can see like his individual, bicep femoris, and like they look like steel cables in there when he really flexes and hits it. Something you don't see in a lot of people. He definitely has a leg up, no pun intended, on everybody else, from the back in these shots.
I feel like too, from the back, he looks even more balanced, whereas from the front, upper body coming up a lot, and then his legs were just so nasty and cut. There was almost like a discrepancy, if I can say that, versus I see more of a balance from behind.
That's a good way to put it, actually. He does look very balanced in this shot.
Let's see what else we got here. Boom. Those are two incredible most musculars, really.
That was a coin flip for me. I don't know about you guys, but obviously Nick's is nasty. Justin's is nasty. I guess it just depends. Do you like a hands clasp, or do you like this kind of non-traditional shot that Justin hits? I think the way he does it, it brings his front delts and his medial delts out big time.
Yeah.
Like I said, this was a coin flip. I kept on looking back and forth at him, being like, wow, man, I really like, oh, no, I like this guy. Oh, so I kept on changing my mind on the most muscular shot, where it was easier to pick who I gave the shot to in the other ones personally.
What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, it's a hard one. They both look great.
Yeah.
It's not hard to knock that, you know what I mean? That.
I like.
You know what I don't like is when, so like these are the best most musculars these guys hit, but then when guys, do a different most muscular that's not their best one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that's, because I know we all like to do like 2 or 3 versions of most muscular, and sometimes people do have like 2 or 3 really good versions. But I notice a lot of guys today hit a second most muscular that wasn't their best one. Like they start doing a crab when it's like something that doesn't look so good on them. Like I think if you see the guy next to you going to hit a different most muscular, he's not confident in his first one. Stay in your first one,
Yeah.
Honestly, I'd probably give that to Nick. I know a lot of people think he has like a bad waist and stuff like that, but I mean, just conditioning wise, you know what I mean? I think Justin's a little bit, his abs are a little washed out. His legs aren't quite as dry, based off that, in my opinion. But I mean, that could go either way too. Depends who you ask.
I don't disagree with you here. I think, I was giving this shot to Nick. I want to see him do something a little bit different with his legs on this shot, to kind of flow more with the upper body. I know he probably does this because it brings out the most separation, but I agree with you on that upper body. Like he's got a better taper going, and he's really learned how to pull his abs in nicely. So I wouldn't disagree with that at all.
I feel like those legs do so much just with that level of detail in them. I mean, even I don't think of a most muscular as a leg shot. I'm going to go back to this for a second. Like I don't think of that being a leg shot, but I look at the legs too. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like this most muscular is like it's a full body pose for him. He's not leaning forward and hiding the legs whatsoever.
Absolutely.
Let me see what else I got here. I think I got a couple other shots lined up. All right. We had a side try.
That one I don't love on Nick personally. It's probably the best way he can hit it, because he's obviously probably tried to do the more traditional way and it just doesn't work for his midsection. I just feel he looks a little blocky here, and I don't know if there's any way you can fix it from the side, because when you're doing a side chest, you can hide the stomach obviously with your arms, and you're driving your chest up, so you're creating a taper from your shoulders and your taper down to your waist. There's no real way to do that. Maybe if he twists his body just a little bit more, so you see the back of the rear delt, or the delta. Yeah, the back shoulder on the other side. But I did give this shot to Justin, but I do want to point out also, just as Nate pointed out several times, he didn't do a great job with his midsection on these shots. Like these should have been walkaway shots for him, and they weren't. And you can obviously see it right here,
Yeah. Yeah. So from here, he's probably not going to do anything else for the rest of the season. I'm going to guess Justin is probably not going to do anything else for the rest of the season. What does that mean then? Who's going to be? Because I feel like if those were our strongest guys coming into this show, just kind of looking forward. You said that the California Pro is coming up, and then there's going to be obviously a good handful of solid shows after that. Who else are we going to be looking forward to that you guys can think of offhand?
Dude, there's a lot of people, which I'm really excited about. You got Akeem, just requalify.
Oh, yeah.
Steve Kukla said he's doing Texas, which is like the last show on the calendar. Then you got Rolly, who still has to qualify, but he'll probably do like the European show.
Yeah.
And then you got Sergio, he's doing Chicago with Hunter. And then Brett Wilkins doing Chicago.
That's right.
I'm excited.
I'm excited to see Brett.
I am too.
Brett too, definitely.
He's put on a lot of muscle.
It's pretty muscle too. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not just muscle or size at all costs. Like, because remember, he turned pro at the Junior Nationals in Classic Physique, winning the overall.
Yeah.
And then he did 212, and now he's an open guy. Like, that's some serious growth over the last couple of years.
He had to really suck down, I know, too, though, to make that at Junior Nationals. I can't remember, because I talked to him after that. We did an interview, and he actually beat my guy in the overall. I was working with a guy, who won his class. Brett won his class, and then Brett won the overall. And his legs were incredible, even back then. And I've heard some stories, man, that dude is freaking strong. So
yeah. He did I think he inclined 405 for like 14 reps or something, or 15.
Yeah. Yeah. So it'll be cool.
That's just ridiculous strength. And it's funny because I don't know if you ever watched some of the old John Meadows videos when him and Ivana used to go out there and train, like, I think in like 2017 or 16, when he was just getting into the sport. He hadn't even competed yet. He was like squatting like 275 with like a safety bar. And so, fast forward today and you see he's got like 6 plates aside on a Smith machine and 8, 9, 10 plates aside on the hack squat. And like you said, benching 405 for 14, 15 reps. I mean, that's just mind-blowing progress, Yeah,
that's cool. All right. Well, listen, let's wrap this thing up. I know we want to try to keep it short. We hit about the 30-minute mark here. Man, this is a good show, though. It's great to see bodybuilding back, even though it's all in Florida. It's nice to watch some shows.
It's also really nice that they finally got their game together and have been broadcasting these shows for pay-per-view. And it's something I've been saying for years that they should be doing, because they're missing out on a market of all of us fans. Yeah. Like, I would have probably paid double to watch this thing today. Don't raise the prices, but
don't tell them that.
Yeah, but you know what I mean, though. Like I love bodybuilding. If there's a good show on a Saturday, I'm definitely going to sit around and watch it, like I did all day today.
Yeah.
Well, remember when we used to have our phones out and like in a certain group, and everyone would be like on the thing because one of us would be at the show or whatever.
Yeah.
It was like before the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
We would talk about like, why is someone not doing this?
Yeah.
All right. Well, for another episode here at Think Big Bodybuilding Media, thanks for hanging with us, guys. We appreciate you watching here with Nate Spear and Andrew Barry. We're breaking down the New York Pro. If you enjoy this stuff, if you want us to do more of it, then I feel like we could probably get better at it. So let us know if you enjoy this. Thanks, guys.
2021 Ifbb Pro League New York Pro Men's Bodybuilding Champion is Nicholas Walker. Congratulations.